Hello everybody, I'm Shania Curtis. I'm the co-founder of Hope Restores and I'm the executive director of development. And I'm Tashira, I go by Shy. I'm also a co-founder and I'm a director over operations. So we're super excited that you guys are all here with us today and we're really pumped for you guys to be part of it. Thank you. So I want you guys to know that you are approved. You, everybody in this room, you're approved. To go and make a change. Do you guys know that? Do you guys already know that you're approved? Yeah? All right, I just want to make sure that you know that already. You can get pep rally style. You're approved. All right. So I need you guys to stop waiting for someone to come along and qualify you. So again, you're approved. The power is yours. Okay, so I have a question for you guys. Who all in this room attended Amanda Ford's Good Enough's presentation of social responsibility? Awesome. Awesome. Good job. Love it. All right. Is this anybody's first presentation on racism? Oh, what we figured. Good. What about good? Anybody on Zoom say that this is their first presentation on racism? No one's first. Awesome. So everybody's had some type of presentation or event where they learned about racism. Good. Awesome, awesome. All right, so I need you guys to raise your hand if you work a job. Keep them up. All right. Keep them up. If you work, keep your hand up. Young or old children? All right. Nice. Or pets. All right. If you're married, or dating, how about raise your hand if you are a part of some type of board that you either volunteer for or you work for? Good. Awesome. And I'm assuming you guys online, all your hands went up also. No one is sitting around just watching paint dry? No? Good. Okay. What about school? Is anybody in school or in a training or anything like that? Nice. You don't want to go back to school? Awesome. All right. I don't think there was a single hand down. No, there was no hands down at all. We all are pretty busy, right? Busy lives. So today we're going to talk about fighting racism on a busy schedule. Did you guys know that that's possible? Oh, wow. So we're going to help you guys learn it. All right. So, incorporate your fight to end racism into the things you're already doing. Awesome. Yeah. So sorry about that, guys. We were not well versed with the clicker yet. So fighting racism on a busy schedule. So one of the reasons why we had everybody go through and raise your hands, because if you notice, there wasn't a single hand that was down in this room. So as we talk about fighting racism on this busy schedule, we think about some of the things that we're busy doing when we can be fighting racism. So when we think about leisure time, maybe you're out to dinner, maybe you're attending an event, what is one way that we can fight racism while we're out to dinner? This isn't rhetorical. Anybody can. Minority-owned business or restaurant? Absolutely, because you're taking into consideration their culture and making sure that you're inclusive of visiting those places. Absolutely. Awesome. What about as a consumer? How can we fight racism in our normal day-to-day as a consumer?
Well, some products could be questioned and go back to graphics that are completely outdated.
Oh, yeah.
Multiple bins, and I think some of that is happening, but I can be more aware and more active in saying, communicating to the business.
Absolutely. The supplier.
And the person that is carrying the product
That's an absolute way to fight racism as a consumer with just the things that we purchase day to day is making sure that it's not conflicting with our values.
Anybody else have any? Yeah, go ahead.
Where do we go?
How little shelf space is donated to products for people of color, different ethnic groups, and as consumers, all of us can talk to merchants about that, encourage more shelf space.
Yeah, it's pretty hard to go find some hair products at Walgreens and then have nothing for your hair. We're traveling to Minnesota or Madison or Chicago to find hair products sometimes. Anything else anybody can think of? There's a lot that goes with this as a consumer. Because I mean, it's your money. You have a right to choose how you spend it. I mean, would you spend your money with a company that discriminates against other people's race and lifestyle? No. I mean, you know you have the right to say, I won't spend my money with you, right? Go ahead.
So sometimes I think about sustainable food pathways, and so food that is really, really cheap. I wonder, why is it cheap? And you know, who harvested it? Who you know, that kind of whole discussion. And I realize it's a real privilege in mine asking that question to begin with, but it is something I'm often asking. Why are these grapes so cheap? Right.
Anybody else? Anybody at home?
Absolutely, always taking that opportunity to question the source. How is this product sourced? For sure. What about at work? How do we fight racism at work? Somebody works. I know some hands went up when the work question came up.
I work with a lot of data, so being able to utilize that data to tell stories about the disparities within our community, around mental health, around poverty and health. So.
Absolutely. Thank you.
At my work, I brought to the staff and leadership to do a racial justice training. And so we went through that and have made diversity, equity, and inclusion a priority at Habitat for Humanity.
Awesome. I love that. Yeah, I love that.
This could also fit anywhere, not in the work, but whenever we're in a group, if we have a dinner at work, this happens, to begin saying statements that are going when someone is speaking in a negative way about race, that we just stand up and we say something, stop it, have some ideas in my mind already, hey, that just doesn't work for me, and just stop the conversation before many words go out. We have the power to do that.
I love that. Exactly. I love that.
I'm retired doc now, but at work, the kinds of things that I think we can do in the healthcare system is question assumptions. There's tons of assumptions that are made when people start talking about stories about people, stories about patients, stories about medical care. And so many of them are, as we know, deeply embedded in racial assumptions. The other part of this is a different kind of thing, but I'm very aware that Martin Luther King's next target was going to be an issue about facing poverty. And I think poverty and injustice are tightly wound together. And on a larger scale, just paying attention to the way that poverty is created by injustice, which is the same template that works to create and sustain racism. And you know, right in this community right now, one of our major institutions is grossly underpaying people, not a living wage. And I'm actually ashamed that it's the institution I used to work with, and I intend to raise a fuss about it.
Good.
So that's the kind of thing that's needed, is to point out where the injustice of poverty is happening right here in our community. Like people who know better and can pay it.
Woo! I love it. I love it. Yes. So I don't know if you guys noticed. So there was two different things that I heard. So over here, I hear you holding others accountable because that's what you're connected to. You're able to do that within your sphere of individuals that you interact with on a day-to-day. And then over here, I heard you speaking up, not necessarily stopping them from saying it, but setting your boundaries for yourself. Hey, stop that. I don't like that. I don't want this being said around me. So on one case, it's being echoed out, and in the other one, it's just standing firm in your beliefs. It's standing firm in who you are and not accepting this type of speech and behavior and activity to take place. Because what you say, I have the power. It's my right to be able to say, I don't want that to be said around me. Please stop. Please don't talk like that about me. I love it.
Anybody else at home have anything to say?
In education, making sure the voices of people of color are in the classrooms and discussions about systematic racism, each of our identities and where power lies.
Yes, it's very powerful. Anybody else at all? All right.
In the community, fighting racism in the community. So I heard a little bit about it in the community, but it's connected to your work, but your work works with a lot of members of the community. What's another way that we can fight racism within the community? Yeah.
Do whatever you can on a personal basis. It's not well known, but this whole initiative of Waking Up White started with a church group and one person who brought a book to read, which was Waking Up White. And a subgroup formed, and another subgroup formed, and that's why we have this whole program. So one person can do miracles.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Stop saying the phrase, mine.
Oh, wow. That's a good one right there.
Can you use the microphone? And that way it ends up on the video tape.
What I just said that to stop using the phrase not in us in a way that makes us sound like we've got our stuff together or big deny. I just see that quote as a denial.
Absolutely.
We hear that over and over and over again.
Or how about, do you think that's still happening? Right? No, you really think that's still a problem? Josh, can we get the mic back there? Oh,
Yeah, I just wanted to add schools to the community, and a lot of us here are on the older end, we may not have kids in school, but as community members, we need to still step into schools and hold them accountable for curriculum and for assisting people of color and anybody who needs extra help. And I think we turn our back on that as we get older, and we're still taxpayers, and we're still very interested, I think, in what happens to the youth of the community, as they will become our mayor and our council members in the future. So this is news to me this year. I really learned a lot through the last 2 years about this. So,
I love it. Yep, you're not done just because your kids are grown up and you're retired, right? You're still in the same community. I love it.
In the community, I would also say, like, educating to people here without making them feel bad, making them feel welcome. A lot of times, people with calling Black community, that can sound like we're not trying to be inclusive with everyone who we are, and also just like paving the way for students to be able to communicate with older adults what's actually happening. They're in a different generation than I am in. And even just like here now, noticing that, it really just like a big gap in between there and just everyone getting a broad idea of what change needs to happen in order to progress forward.
Absolutely, because it's that inclusive part, right? Like, we're still a part of the community. I love it, absolutely. And then we learn from each other, you know. We're learning from the people that went ahead of us, and then also, you know, with the younger generation, they're teaching up, they're sharing that up, because we keep revolving and we need to keep that line of communication open, and we're going to continue to grow. I love that.
Yes, always listen to your students. Stop being defensive. Let them tell you how they feel. Their words matter, and it's their feelings, and so you have to listen.
That's just what I was going to say. I was going to say that everyone should attend events in their community, and for a message to all of us white people is to listen more and maybe talk less. And when that happens, we will be doing better work.
We're growing, right? What's the saying? 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason, right? Was that how it went?
That's what we teach the kids, right?
You know, this is really fun to be able to speak with you in this way. And I didn't know I had so much to say. So, but one of my thoughts is there's a 2040 initiative for lacrosse, and it's treated like it's so far out there. And I'm very flustered about why are we, I mean, I appreciate the 2040 vision, and what I would like to see for lacrosse is an inclusive community, and we need to start today in order to create that 2040 community that we would love to be inclusive and enjoy having. And that would then provide our youth a reason to stay in lacrosse instead of moving away to someplace else.
Exactly.
Absolutely. I love it. Yeah, that's...
One more back there? Oh.
I can actually speak pretty loud.
Oh, raise your voice.
Okay, I was just gonna say to join events and see what the events are going on and support. And like she said, just come and listen and ask questions. We usually don't see many older people that are out there supporting, but going to events and listening to what you have to say is important. And taking from it and asking questions.
Love it.
Exactly. Is there anybody on Zoom that has anything?
Acknowledgement of cultural diversity is not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing to recognize that there are differences. That doesn't mean we're divisive, embrace and learn about each other.
Right. And then also, Hope Restores is lacrosse's new African American Resource Center. We are here. We can always use volunteers. You can always stop by. You can get involved in any events that we're doing. And then get familiar with other groups here in lacrosse. We have Black here. We have the Black Student Leaders. There's a lot of different groups that are making moves. I mean, there's a good site. So get yourself familiar with the different groups here in lacrosse. There are many, many more.
Absolutely. So I heard a lot of different examples of things that you can do. You have to do them though, right? Like, it's not enough to just know it. We have to absolutely do them. And so those are some really examples of how to get involved in the community. And so another way to fight racism is to vote. Like, what comes to mind when you think about using your voting right, your voting privilege to help fight racism? In what ways can you use voting?
I can talk pretty loud too, but
Okay.
before I go to that, I would like to ask the question, and I don't know if anybody else has this question. Can you talk about the 2040 community? Because I don't know what you're talking about when you say that.
Do you want to tell us a little bit more about, actually, you know what we'll do? If it's okay with you, can we come to that at the end, the 2040 campus? Just so that we don't get too far off base, but I think it would be good for everybody to hear about it. So we'll come back to it. So voting, how can we use voting to help fight racism?
elect people of color.
Yeah,
Transport our neighbors
absolutely.
who vote.
Yeah, if that's a barrier. That's actually one of the things that Hope Restores does, is we provide transportation. So if transportation is a barrier for your neighbor, or a barrier for someone you know, maybe you're in church and you know that there's families or whoever that doesn't have a ride, maybe you put together some type of transportation program where you can get them to the booths, you can get them to votes, to voting. What about when it comes down to selecting that candidate? Would it maybe be a good idea to select someone whose principles, whose passions, whose morals align with yours? Yeah,
Sure.
I think so. I think that's definitely a way. Yes.
Oh, okay. Anybody on Zoom? No? All right, anybody else at all? All right. Change for the next generation. Our children need to work together to save this planet. So while we're all fighting about equality or treating our neighbors the correct way, our planet is suffering right now, right? And I think it's very selfish and unfair of us to continue fighting, and we should be working together. And we're gonna roll this in our children's lap, right? Because we can't get along. So they'll be working on saving the planet separated, and it's something that we need to work on. It's something we should have worked on. All right, so we know that nobody is born racist, right? Does anybody disagree with that at all?
Has anybody met someone that was born that way? No. No one saw an infant come out speaking all the wrong things? No. So make sure. All right, so this is a myth. This is J.S. Park. So myth, nobody is born racist. They're taught racism. Truth. Ideas are not always taught, but caught. Ideas are stitches woven into the system, which weave their ways into our DNA. So he said they're not taught, they're caught. So let's think about our kids, right? We all hear about our kids, and we all try to set really good examples for our kids, right? Yeah. So one of the things that I think about when he speaks about it not being taught, it's caught. Has anyone ever heard someone say, be careful of who you hang out with? Or how about if we go biblically, when you hear over and over, like it's important what you surround yourself with. It's important what you watch, what you hear, because it all has a way of seeping through. They're all ways that just being in that environment, you don't necessarily have to sit a child down and say, this is what you call this person, or don't talk to that person. Sometimes just hearing it, just being around it, just being in that environment, it seeps through. And then when they get angry, or they get upset, or they might even get around just the right, wrong crowd, and they know exactly what to say to cement their unionship into that crowd, it'll come up. And you have to stop and think, when did I teach? When did you learn that? When did someone sit you down and teach you how to speak those terrible words, how to say those awful things, and how to think those terrible thoughts? It never, for most people, there's no class for that. And if there is, we need to all get together, protest, and ban it, right? We gotta get it out of there. But for most people, this is not a class that someone has taken. It's things that has seeped in little by little. Sometimes there might be, someone in the family or something that they've heard it from, but oftentimes it's just from proximity. It's just from proximity. You hear those things and they seep through, and before you know it, you caught it.
They caught it. Just an example, you're in the mirror, you're looking at yourself, your baby's playing, or the towers are playing behind you, and you say, wow, I'm getting so fat, right? And you're just looking at yourself in some kind of way. And then later on, your daughter, she's playing with her friends, and she says, well, I can't eat that because I'm getting so fat. And you're like, oh my God, where did she get that from? You can have this, what do you mean? I don't have self-esteem issues. But she caught it. She caught your message to yourself. And then she reflected that in herself, and she delivered that image that you put in yourself about her own self, because she doesn't want to be what you called yourself in the mirror. And it's that simple. We don't know what they're going to catch. Kids catch different things from different people, so we have to be cautious at all times with what we're going out to them. All right, so what's going on in your house, right? Think about your upbringing, think about your house, think about your family dinner. What's said at your house at your family dinner?
Who's over there?
Yeah, who's at your house? Like, and this is going back, we know nobody's born racist, but we see this behavior. So could it be something like a family dinner? What's going on? Can anybody tell me what happened in their household the first time they realized, and now as adults they're reflecting back, when they first experienced somebody saying something racist? Anybody?
I think when I look back, what happened was nothing. And you talk about Melanie Cohen and interrupt was nobody spoke up and said, don't say that. To anything that was sexist or racist. People just said what they wanted and it just sort of permission in that Midwest mindset that we lived in Amanda. We all just played nice and let it happen. That's what I remember.
That goes back to that, oh, what's said in my house stays in my house, right? But some things are not need to be said in your household, especially when we have little children catching on to them. Anything else people can think of or want to share? You don't have to share of things that went on in your household that were racist and you recognize it now. Maybe things that you've heard in other people's household that you don't allow in your household because you realize how it can affect children. Anybody at all?
I had family in the 70s and 80s, and we had a dessert that had the N-word in that, N balls, and they were these little tasty rum balls that everybody loved. I realize now that they were just rum balls, and that's why I loved them and delighted in them. And every single member of my family used the N-word for that dessert. And I'm not that old, and I remember being like, this is wrong, and everyone thought it was funny, and I was like, this is wrong, and I never said a word about it until I was probably 18 or 19, and it was at that point that my family had made it clear that I wasn't allowed to date a black man, and I had spent most of my childhood not thinking that my family was racist until I look back at it and just go, wow. That was horribly, horribly inappropriate. And that, 70s and 80s right here in this area.
Yeah, it was so normalized though, right? Like everyone said it, it was very normalized. You didn't think to stand up and say anything. Yeah, yep.
I was going to just share that it was my people that I really respected and looked up to that at a young age. I understand what you're saying. It just, I caught different things, even though, we're young, we're impressionable. But it was grandparents that I adored, and I loved spending time there. And, now I have to look back as you shared, thank you for sharing that. It's like, that just wasn't right. It was.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, absolutely.
I think the biggest thing in my household, both growing up and then as a mother and now as a grandmother, is that we don't talk about it. Absolute silence. Something does not come up, couple will bring up, and it doesn't go there. So absolute silence.
That's a huge one, and it's so opposite from it being just worked into like your normal day-to-day. If you go from that to, we just don't talk about it at all.
Complete opposite in my house. So I speak Spanish with my children. I'm Hispanic. My parents immigrated from Colombia. I didn't recognize that we talk about race all the time. We do. I teach my children. We have discussions around racism that we're seeing, on social media, or whether it's the latest murder of a black person who just being themselves. So we talk about it, and we've been talking about it for years. And to to like hear them and then have conversations around social justice with their friends is how we get to the world. And taking them and, they've seen the film Amplifying Black Voices. They recognize the racism that they see in their schools. And are more likely to stand up because they get comfortable talking about it. Does that feel like?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's really powerful.
Is there anybody on Zoom that wants to share anything at all?
Someone wrote, I can remember my mom telling me to always lock the car doors when driving through a, quote, bad neighborhood, unquote, message was that you could identify the bad neighborhood by the color of the people you see there.
Yeah. Don't know if you guys know that Black people are scared of white people too. Just let me know. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you guys. Thank you for sharing. So I put this picture of the dinner table here, right? I was invited to a friend's house before. A lot of times this happened to me. And as an adult now, I'm just like, wow, why did I sit there at the table and allow them to do this? But they would say to me, Shania, you're not like the rest of the Black people, right? You're not like them. You don't talk like them. You're not dangerous. You don't misbehave. You don't do all these kind of things. And I'm thinking, let alone, but my father's in prison, but I haven't shared that with you, right? And my mom is a single mother. I haven't shared that with you. But since I'm a little bit calmer and I sit at this table with you, you just point me out and you say that I'm just not like the rest of my people, because I'm a little bit different. And that you don't have a problem with me, it's just the other Black people. And I heard that so much and it became familiar, and I would still sit there and smile and play and eat their good food and swim in their hot tubs and jump on their trampolines. They had all the things that I didn't have at home. As an adult, I'm so angry. Like, why did I allow that? Because I'm accustomed to it. Yep. I'm accustomed with being okay with that. As a Black person, we become accustomed to just being that one token Black person. At least I made it through. At least they invited me to dinner and I got to jump on the trampoline and have extra desserts. I mean, I was okay with that. So then we look at this dinner table, and I'm thinking about Uncle Bob sitting there, right? And he's making all these racist jokes and everybody's laughing. And then a couple people are just like, that's not appropriate, Bob. And then I just think about Tommy sitting across the table and he's just watching and looking at everybody's faces and seeing what they're doing. And even though his mom says, don't say the things that Bob says, Bob, don't say that. But then he sees the laughter in the room. So then he goes to school, and gets into an argument with a Black kid. He throws those jokes out Uncle Bob said. Because it was okay. Even though people pretended and they were really passive and like, oh, don't say that. But nobody stood up and said, Bob, if you say those things, you will leave my home, right? Because there's certain things that you're not allowed in your home, right? Racism should not be allowed in your home. And it could be to the point that Uncle Bob can't come back to your house until he changes his attitude. And he may not be a part of your kid's life because he is causing damage to them. And as parents, we make those decisions all the time. There's certain things that our kids are just not allowed to be a part of. And it may be Uncle Bob.
Absolutely. The same way that we protect our kids and we protect our loved ones from other things that are unsafe for them, racism should be put in that category as well. So when we talk about, having these dinners, one of the ways that we can fight racism is protecting our loved ones, protecting our kids from hearing this recycled, speech, this recycled hate that's being passed around without ever speaking up, without ever knowing the difference. Because what I've heard is that you get to a point that you do know the difference. You're not born that way, but you get to an age that you do start to notice that it is not normal. It is not okay. And so you have to start speaking up around your dinner table. Uncle Bob's not allowed here. Protect your loved ones, protect your kids, protect your grandbabies. Protect them, stop it. Stop it in its tracks. When Uncle Bob gets it together or he learns some different jokes, Bob can come back over for potato salad. All right, let's talk about racism with our children. Diana, awesome. Before we were fearful of talking about sex with our kids, we better talk about racism. It's okay. It's uncomfortable, but it's something that we need to talk about. Does anybody, and Diana gave an example of how she talks about racism with her kids. Anybody else?
It's not only, we've talked about racism, we've just talked about taking advantage of people. Simple thing of watching television, looking at an ad. You can point out the subtle messages that you're seeing there and show your kids what's there. Some of it's racial, some of it's inequality, some of it's a lot of stuff. And the more you identify that and bring it up, the more the kids are going to be able to see it, and you can open up the discussion about it. Our daughter now is having conversations like this all the time with her kids. And now it's about transgender stuff. And they're becoming quite savvy about it, and it's gratifying, and I'm humbled by it. And I still discover ways that, you know, she catches where they caught something. And so she has to have a conversation. She says, how do I unpack this with my 5-year-old? So, you know, there you go.
Exactly, 5-year-olds are very smart.
I think one of the challenges is how do you model when you make a mistake? I think that's one of the things that you can really teach your children is, you know what, I made this mistake because, in my opinion, racism is on a spectrum and it lives within me. And so, when I make a mistake, having that conversation with your children, and then also giving them tools. If anyone ever accuses you of being racist, you probably want to just say, you know, you're probably right, tell me more. Because that defense mechanism that is built into all of us, to say I'm not racist, is not serving anyone. Because it's not being honest. And I think that's one of the most important things we can teach our kids, is how do you have those conversations, but then how do you also realize this isn't just, you know, this is in me.
Absolutely, being aware of it and working on that, making an active effort every day to work on that to make sure that you're seeing things from an equality standpoint. Absolutely.
So also think about their innocence. So we have little Bobby right here on the screen, right?
Everyone has a name. When we go through this again, they'll have a different name.
Okay.
Whatever thought so.
So little Bobby's talking to his parents and they say, Bobby, do you know anything about racism? So let's just say it's 5. What's that? Bobby, you have friends at school, right? They're all different colors. Yeah, Robbie's my best friend. Did you know that Robbie is more likely to not be able to live in the house due to the color of his skin? He's gonna say, what? Why can't Robbie live in the house? Do you know that Robbie may not get a job? Robbie can't get a job? These are things that, you guys may think like, oh, kids aren't ready for that, but they're ready. They're ready. We keep waiting to college to educate our kids, and we don't need to wait that long. They're ready because they live in their own little 5-year-old world. So when he's aware that other kids are experiencing things different than him due to the color of their skin, he's going to be aware of his behavior that comes along with that. So don't hold back with these conversations, and don't doubt that they are not capable of understanding, because they are.
Absolutely. A young person will put you on the spot so fast. What a 5-year-old? So fast. They're so curious. So, you know, I always find it really, really interesting is that, you know, I've heard people say, well, I never noticed color when I was younger. I didn't realize, you know, I didn't really recognize color until I was much older, which I think is, for me, it was always the oddest thing that I've ever heard. Because anytime that, you know, I've played with white children, you know, and I'll get like the most random question out of nowhere. Like, we'll be laughing and having a good time, and they'll be like, why are your gums that color? You know, why are you so much darker? You know, do you taste different? Nah, you can't eat me, you know? But these are questions. Kids are so curious and they're sponges, and these are just questions that come out of their innocence. And so for someone to say, I never noticed color until I got this old. It's like, well, it's okay to be honest. Sure you did. And then there's nothing wrong with that. And so, you know, Mary, you said something about having those conversations. Stop not talking about it, because that doesn't help anyone at all. And it actually, you know, it denies them their own intelligence. You know, they're smart. They recognize that things are different. Have conversations with them. Talk about racism. Talk about the beauty in difference, the beauty in culture. You know, it doesn't necessarily have to be a tough conversation, but let's make sure that we're asking those questions. Go through, get books. that don't only look like, who is he right now, Bobby? Bobby. Get books that don't only look like Bobby, you know, get some books that look like me, that look like your neighbor, that look like all different people of different cultures, because that's what's getting them ready, that's what's getting them comfortable, getting them used to being able to have those conversations and feeling empowered to do so, feeling like they don't have to qualify, you know, you don't have to be Black, you don't have to be, you know, Hispanic to ask questions and to be a part of a conversation. You just have to be willing and you have to be coming from the correct mindset.
Yeah, so please don't deny their questions. So if they're walking down the street and they point to a person of color, this is a Black person. It's okay. Don't deny their questions.
No, it's deny, right?
All right, we talked about educating your children about other cultures and lifestyles, and we talked about that a little bit. Educate your kids. Take them, we all love food of other cultures, right? We all love food of other cultures. So teach your kids more about other cultures than just the food. And we'll have some amazing kids. Talk about other different lifestyles that people live. Be open to educate your kids. Buy little Black baby dolls and brown baby dolls and Asian baby dolls in your house. Books. And then take your kids out in the community and get involved as much as you can and show them different cultures. I mean, there are little fests everywhere. You know, it's a good way to educate your kids. Instead of sitting down with the book, take them to a festival. Where's the money cat right today?
Oh, I have it. I was just gonna say something too about just stereotypes with behavior, and just educating kids on like, just because that individual is acting that way is not because of their complexion of their skin. That is that person. That's just who they are. So a lot of times, like in the classroom, for me, for example, I'm a very outspoken Black type in the classroom, so I attract a lot of attention, which I feel as a young person then that I was like stereotyped because of my skin complexion, because no one else was as loud as me in the classroom, so they just associated loudness with my skin color.
Yeah, absolutely. Because they're shy Black people, right? Like, I ain't shy. There has to be.
She's not shy. I'm not shy.
No, for sure. So can I just ask a quick question? Has anybody ever seen any green people? No green people? Online? Has anyone on Zoom ever seen any green people? No? No one's seen green people? What about blue people? No? No blue or purple people? All right. So I just want to make sure that's not just me. So I've heard things like, oh, I don't see color. I don't see color at all. I don't care if you're blue, purple, orange, green. So I just want to make sure that I am not the only one that's not seeing these green people, right? Because we don't come in green and we don't come in purple and blue, right? So let's be realistic and let's make sure that we're not using that type of speech, because it's silly. If I'm just being honest, it's very silly. You know, you can see people without going to these extremes of blue, green, and purple. I haven't seen any green people, but if I did, I probably would treat them differently. I would probably run. If I saw a green person, I would probably run. So let's just be realistic when we're giving these examples. You know, if you're trying to make connection with people, make a connection with them. You know, don't condescend them, you know, just, no, I really try my best to be consistent with everybody that I meet.
Yes. Please don't tell your kids that Black people stayed in the oven longer. It's very hurtful, because I didn't want to be stuck in the oven longer than everybody else. I don't know if you guys heard the saying that the only thing that was for Black people is that they stayed in the oven longer. It's very hurtful. Sorry. So we talked a little bit about modeling behaviors. We kind of going through my slide faster than I expected. So continue to model good behavior for your kids. You know that they're always watching, just model good behavior. Can I get like maybe 2 examples of how to model good behavior?
What about actually doing and showing up the way that you're asking your kids to show up? So, you know, I think you had given the example of teaching your kids about fairness and teaching them how to treat people in a nice way, not necessarily just race, but just being good humans. You know, as we are good humans and we show it up in the world, our kids are watching those things. And so they tend to show up in the world in that same way.
I would say also just showing that you are confident as a parent without having to belittle the next person, just because you feel sometimes like your ego can feel very intelligent or confident around another individual who you might feel is less than you. So sometimes I feel like children can actually see that when you're trying to be better than them.
Absolutely. Absolutely, thank you.
All right, the last thing is just get involved, and we talked about that. There are events that happen through cities and towns. There's protests. Make sure you feel like it's safe for your kids. Bring them along.
Juneteenth. There's Juneteenth.
Join into that. There are different celebrations all over the world about different cultures. Join in. Looking for something to do with your kids. Go on events on Facebook and find one and join in with your kids. Get involved.
Number 3, to help fight racism in your everyday life.
All right, don't be Karen. So, this is a joke, right? So who's Karen? Anybody want to share who Karen is?
To me, Karen is someone that judges someone by their skin tone and uses the police because they're uncomfortable instead of for an emergency. A Karen can be someone that just likes to pick. Karens usually are taking things out of proportion.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Has anybody not heard of the new saying, Karen? Like, anybody not heard of that? You haven't heard? We're going to tell you all about Karen. But,
I don't know why it bugs me so much, because I've heard to see police being used in ways that really shouldn't be. And I know that people do that, but at the same time, I know so many people that Karen that who don't do that, that I don't know why, something bothers me that the name that a lot of us love, that this is about awful things, so I'm just going to say that.
yeah. So, what I would tell you is it's not about the name Karen, it's about the behavior of a Karen. And just like it is, it's a stigma, right? If somebody had a lot of experiences with somebody and somebody named her Karen. So I was told that Karen came from The Simpsons. It was a behavior of the lady, her name was Karen. And then people just started using that name. So we're not downing Karen, but right now, this is something that's being talked about. There's actually a movie about Karen. It's a behavior that we all recognize, and somebody put a name to it, and that's why they use the name Karen. But don't feel that all Karens are, have this behavior. That's not what it is. It's an example of a person and a personality. Does anybody else have any information or want to say anything about Karen? Go ahead.
Well, I'll just share that I think about this as kind of when white people within systems use institutional power in different ways. That's kind of how I'm thinking about this, and so certainly the police, but I'm thinking about even within school systems, within university systems, within hospital systems, right? When individuals within that system can pull on the university, the power of that institution to punish or to do something to someone else. I often think about this as broader, because I think it's all over the place in these hierarchical structures.
Absolutely. Absolutely, because it's not about the name.
It's not
Absolutely, it's the behavior.
Yeah, so about behavior too, it's definitely someone who wants to challenge your place in society and also remind you of your place, like who you are supposed to play in society. And I just feel like, even with myself, every time that I have been approached with something like Karen, they come with the same exact energy. It's nothing changed. It's so crazy how much that they're just alike. It's the same approach. And for me being a target, it's kind of like, oh, well, how do I respond? Because she's older, typically older white woman, and I'm like, who are they going to listen to first? If who's working in the role? And how do I take myself out of this situation?
So, I put a picture, and what do we notice about this picture? If I took away just the color of her skin, what do we notice about the lady in this picture? I was calling her Karen, but I don't want to be offensive. But what do we notice about her? You kind of yell it out. She's angry. Angry? Aggressive. You think she's listening to anybody right now?
Her mind's set up.
Exactly. Her mind is set up, right? So one thing I shared with somebody, I said, well, you know what? Grandma can be a Karen sometimes, right? Be honest.
You said your grandma was a Karen.
Well, you know what? I don't know if this being recorded, right? So I don't know what I talk about, but you know. Sometimes my grandma can be a Karen, and then her neighbor in the neighborhood, all black neighborhood, she was a Karen to me. Couldn't walk on her grass. You couldn't wear white after Labor Day. She had all these rules of what you couldn't do, and your music was too loud. So to me, she was a Karen. But the Karens I grew up around were a little bit different than the white Karen. There's something different. Anybody know what's different between, yes, Beth?
Well, it strikes me as a very entitled person.
Yes.
Right now, people are calling, there's traffic circle being installed, is being called for by Karen, because she didn't like the traffic. I understand what you're talking about, using the name Karen, but at the same time, white people all over the place act entitled. Stamp their feet, maybe not physically, but in their hands. And you know what? We stereotype forever, white people have, so let's live with Karen. If this person is in all of this, is what we say before we
So to me, it's the white privilege. And
yeah, white privilege.
Karen, see, unlike the Karen in my neighborhood or my grandma maybe kind of like Karen, they don't have the white privilege that goes with it, you know? They don't have the police that are going to back up, they're coming back Karen up no matter what she says. And they know that the police aren't going to back them up no matter what they say. So we are going to tell you guys how to not be a Karen. Stop being judgmental. That's for anybody. So we don't got to focus on the name anymore. Let's focus on stop being judgmental, right? It's not helpful.
Your personal opinion and your personal judgment of how things go, it's just that. It's for you. It's your own personal opinion. So we don't have to put it out there on anybody else. Just keep it to yourself. Keep it to yourself.
Defense is down, I dare you. So I mean, it's like, it's okay to listen. Put your defenses down and listen. Do you have a question?
No, I just wanted to kind of share, like, our whiteness and our privilege is so ingrained into us that we don't even realize it.
Yes.
I mean, because it's so easy for us when we're segregated from people of color, as we have been in this community for a long time. And I know we go down to Gulf Shores in the wintertime, and we went through Alabama, and I have to say that we went to a place, a person of color's place to stay in a hotel, and I was afraid. And we left and went. And it dawned on me later that I don't even know how deep that is because I was so frightened, you know. And we went to the Legacy, and we went to the Peace and Social Justice Memorial, and it was a very humbling experience. And I just want, you know, we can sit here and say, you know, well, we're trying and we are, you know, but you don't even realize until you get put into the situation because we've been so segregated.
that goals, you know?
Thank you for putting your defenses down and sharing that.
May I just add, to piggyback on that last statement, is not only put our defenses down, but begin asking the question, what am I afraid of? What is my fear? What is my resentment? What is my fear? And that gets me grounded in what I'm holding on to. Even though the person on the other side of the table, at the dinner table, is speaking with authority just because they are louder, older, whatever. It's it's possible to say, well, I have a different opinion, and it's as important as yours, and you can agree to disagree, etc., etc. But I don't know. It's this fear thing.
Exactly.
Did you come up with anything after you had left that Airbnb or that hotel, as you were thinking about why am I so afraid, as you were able to meditate on it? Were you able to come up with any answers, or was it just more so shocking, the fact that you recognized that you were in this like fearful state of mind and you had no idea why?
Well, around the hotel, there were signs all the way around the hotel that said, take everything that you have up with you and live again, you know? And that kind of set a fear for me, but I think it was more something that I didn't even realize was inside of me, you know? And it's very humbling.
Yeah.
It's very humbling.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah, sometimes you don't know until it happens, and you have to face that.
So stop making everything about you. Karen likes to make everything about her. Even
Her experiences.
yeah, I don't want to. I'm always protecting people's feelings, but I don't want to do it right now. But even your statement about the feelings of Karen and all Karens aren't bad, you know. Well, how Black people are bad, and we have dealt with that every day, and we have defended ourselves constantly. And if our names were not correct enough for the job, we deal with that. So I just need you guys to stop making it about. Everything's not about you. It's not about the Karens that are good. We know there's good Karens. We know there's good Karens. But we're just making an example. And then I said, well, what's your problem? Like, let it go. Karen has a problem. I like to say that Karen has some mental issues, mental illness issues, right? Because it's something bigger. It's bigger. Because none of us on a daily basis goes and just starts yelling at people and screaming and going crazy, right? So usually there's some issues with Karen that she hasn't dealt with. And that says, what have you marinated in? So what is Karen marinated in? What do you guys think? So what would a person that gets up and throws a tantrum in a park because people are playing music or people are barbecuing, what do you think they were marinated in their household? Because it's a Karen issue, right? Anybody got an example of what you think Karen has been marinated in? Privilege, maybe one? Maybe Karen never learned temperament. Maybe she's spoiled, right?
Entitlement.
Entitlement, yeah.
What was the other one here?
Fear.
Fear?
Fear, exactly.
Insularity, just
Yeah.
when you roll this system and everything else.
Absolutely.
Exactly. We all have to think about what we were marinated in. Like, we have to go and sit and be like, why do we do the things that we do? There's a reason for it. There's a reason for our fears. I was in Mexico and I was fearful for some reason. And I'm so angry at myself, but I was fearful because I was somewhere I didn't know. I was around people that spoke a different language. And then I let the news and the media start getting in my head, and I didn't even enjoy the culture. It took me days. I missed out on 2 days because of fear, because of things that were programmed in my head. But I met the most beautiful people and ate beautiful food and seen, just beauty everywhere. But fear made me lose 2 days of my vacation. So let's think about that. Think about what we're marinated in.
Yeah, you hit on something that I found myself paying attention to is the essential role of curiosity in learning and connecting with what's different or new or unknown. But fear is the strongest thing that shuts down curiosity.
Absolutely.
And so the first step is recognizing we're afraid, but then the next step can turn into a positive thing, is what can I be curious about here? Or what can I learn? And sometimes that, like on vacation, you finally, oh, yeah, this is something new, I can enjoy this. You know.
Like you said, fear, curiosity. Children are very curious, and then we stump them to the ground with our fears. We need to stop that. Like, we are destroying them.
I think when I think about the fear, people talk about, I know what you're talking about, feeling, but I couldn't name it because I'm not afraid of people, people with difference. I think the fear comes down to that zero-sum belief that if we have it and then we let other cultures in, we're going to have to share it and not less. And I don't know if we even know what it is. We're going to have to share it and not lose. It's like air. If I breathe too much, you're not going to do without it. But white people really think that. I think that's what we picked up on Thanksgiving table. Like a rabbit all the time. And I'm sorry about that, but that's what we have to work on with the thing to see what we want.
Thank you.
Sadly, one of the things that we've marinated in this country is a false history. We haven't learned accurate history to understand that some of the privilege and position that families and people are in, they have because of what was taken away from us. You know, our land recognition just before we started today, recognizing for all the farmers in this area, where did they get their land from? What privilege they had at the expense of others.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. Back there, Josh. A really great point.
Just to go along with fear, I would say like just me, I grew up here in La Crosse, so a lot of classmates here were I'm the first person that they met Black, and that for that was a lot of responsibility, just because I am stereotyped, right, when I walk in the classroom. And growing up with them, and over time, no one had ever slept over at my house. Not that they couldn't, they just didn't. I always went to their home where they felt most comfortable. So I had to become uncomfortable for my friends to be used to what it's like being Black. So I had to kind of sacrifice, just like, you know, putting someone else before me. You guys understand?
And that's such a learned, I think for a lot of Black people, like it's so common that that's such a learned behavior that we're accustomed to pacifying. We're accustomed to not do things that come off too direct or too defensive. And like when you think back to it, it's kind of frustrating, right? Like how much you made room for this person's feelings or that person's feelings with very little consideration, you know, taken on yours, or you know, how often you hear something even from friends that was meant to be like sweet and endearing, like choking Black friend, or any of the silly like little jokes and things, like, you know, you talked about being, oh, they were just cooked a little bit longer, you know, the things that we just kind of let bead off and slide off, our, you know, because we're just so used to, well, you know, it's not even about picking your battles. It's like, I'd be yelling all day. Like, it's just choosing to own your peace instead of giving your peace away at every offense. Absolutely. Thank you.
So Karen, for anybody, please don't use your white privilege to cause harm. I'm asking you guys, use your privilege to do good and don't cause harm.
Awesome. So number 4, on how to fight racism in your everyday life, take action, right? So I have heard so many different examples of the dinner table, being at work, being at school, spending time with your grandkids, being with your friends, going on vacation. There are absolutely things that you guys can do to fight racism in your everyday life. And guess what? You know how to do it. You just told me how to do it. We just talked about how to do it. So here's the question that I have for you. What are you doing to fight racism other than attending speeches and presentations? What are we doing? And that's not rhetorical. I really want to know. Is there something that you're out there doing? You know, we talked about the book, right? Getting the book out to people, getting them educated on it, right? But what do you do with that education? Where's the action behind that? Because for me, it's the equivalent of when you go to all of these presentations, when you come out and you sit through all of these speeches, when you listen to the TED Talks and you do nothing with that inaction, that no activity, for me that is the equivalent of going to college, getting you a superb education and doing absolutely nothing with it, not even applying for the job. It's just pointless. What good does it do me that you know better if you're not taking action with what you know better? It doesn't do me any good. That brings us to silence. Speak up! Speak up! I heard a couple people say, oh, I don't need the money. I'm not enough. It'll carry. Do the same thing with your actions. Stop being silent. Start having conversations. Talk to your coworkers. If you don't have something within your company that's surrounded around diversity, inclusion, equity, start something. Start it. You know how. Start it. You have an opinion. You have an idea. You know what's right. You know what needs to be done. Speak up. No one's ever going to say, how dare you make this a better place. I won't. My kids won't. Intention is nothing without action. You can have the best of intentions. You can plan on doing many, many things. But until you do, it doesn't matter. I heard someone say, nothing beats a fail but a try. So even if you try to start something within your company, within your organization, and it doesn't take off, at least you tried. You know, but there's the off chance that it might start like a small spark and continue to grow from there, but you gotta try. We gotta start taking these actions. We gotta stop sitting and listening to the speeches and coming to the presentations and then doing nothing with it. All right, so in the beginning of this, we asked all the questions. We found out that there's not a single person here that's never attended some type of racial presentation or conference around equity. So we all know it, right? Some of you raised your hand, you've been to, you went and saw Amanda speak. Some of you guys online, you had some really great examples. So that's it, right? We've done the facts. We know the facts. We know that racism exists, right? We've seen, heard, and witnessed it. We've seen it on TV, we've seen it on social media. We know it's there. We know racism is there. And we know it's in lacrosse too, right? It's happening in lacrosse, right? We know that. We've heard it. You guys have heard the presentations. You've listened to the TED Talks. You've sat around and you've hosted book clubs. You've read the books. You've shared your different ideas on it. You've shared with one another how to make change, what racism looks like, what to stop doing. So we've heard it. We've witnessed it. Sometimes when it's been witnessed, it's not necessarily my story. It's not necessarily your story. You know, it didn't have to happen to you directly for you to have witnessed it. You could have been overhearing, You know, someone saying, well, is this because of the color of my skin? Or I want to talk to you about this situation. This wasn't right. You've witnessed it. You've seen it. So we know we know what's going on. The facts are all there. We've seen the stats over and over again. We've seen those statistics. We've looked at the data, right? Injustice. Wrongfully accused. Inequality. Unfairness happening everywhere. Multiple different situations where we can think of where there's been something unfair that has happened. Health. Lack of treatment. How many of you guys know that when a lot of Black people go in for medical treatment, that we are absolutely fearful that we're not going to get helped properly?
Or we don't deserve pain medicine after a C-section.
How many of you know that my pain would be the exact same as your pain? And I don't have any drug addictions. Pain is pain, right? But we have to wonder about those things. Health is a huge, huge disparity. We worry about coming back out of the hospital for something routine and simple. You know, I think about my mother, and she's got some different ideas because belief systems are passed down to us. But my mother used to say, if you have cancer, you don't go in because if they cut into you, it's going to spread. And that's something that was passed down to her. Somebody went into the hospital and they didn't make it out. So her mother and, you know, older people around her, you know, that's what was told to her. And so my mom grew up very fearful of going into hospitals because they cut into you and they make it spread. I've had conversations where, let me be honest, I've had arguments. I have had very courageous conversations with my health provider about what is going on and what is right and normal with my body as I was being told that this is not the problem, I'm just going to put you on this medication. Ma'am, I don't need that medication. I know my body, that's not what I need. Well, let's just put you on it anyways. Completely dismissive. It is so frustrating that I have to defend just my right to basic health care. That I have to defend my right to be heard just as a patient, just to be viewed and just to be valued as just an adult that knows what's right for me. I shouldn't have to fight for those basic things. But we do. We do every day. And it's frustrating and it's hurtful. But those are some of the things that we deal with when it comes to our health treatment. Homicide, increasing, still increasing. Education, the barriers that we have to go through, you know. We have our kids saying we can't even focus on learning because we have to deal with this teacher that I have to defend myself every day, you know. One of the things that one of our kids said was, when they said Black Lives Matter, that teacher said all lives matter. That's not the point. It's not the point. Why are you arguing with my child, with your student? Why are you arguing with them? Focus on their education. They can't do that. What about the quality of education? We worry about it all the time. I heard back there, you know, that child isn't behaving that way because they're Black. Stop putting them into this category. That's just who they are. That's their personality. But more often than not, it gets slapped on like a label. They're loud, they're this way because they're Black. That's not true. It's not true. And these are things that we have to step over all the time. So, we've had some time to think about it, right? This issue of racism, we've had some time. We know it's there. 400 years and counting. I think that's time. So here's the hard truth. We don't want your tears. We do not want your tears. We would trade you those tears that you're shedding in a heartbeat for something useful that we can use. Something that's gonna make a difference, something that's gonna make me be heard, make me be seen when I go in to my doctor's appointment. Give me something I can use. When I tell you what I've been through, or I hold you accountable for something hurtful that you've said to me, don't cry. Stop crying. We don't have time to comfort you anymore. I remember I was in high school, and we had to watch a movie. The movie was Roots, right? So I have seen Roots so many times. So many times. So we're in school and we had to watch this movie, and so I chose, and the movie was being played kind of in the dark. So I sat at the back, so I had a little bit of the light coming in from the door. My door had like the cutout of the window. And so I sat in the back so I could read a book, so I could do something that was a little bit more productive with my time. So I chose to sit quietly and read my book. The teacher said to me, "Do you not know that you're supposed to be watching a movie right now? You need to pay attention." And I said, "No offense, I'm not bothering anybody. I just want to sit here quietly and read my book." I said, I've seen this movie 100 times. I don't care how many times you've seen it. You're going to sit here and watch this movie. And so what I said to her was, it was something along the lines of, "What you're not going to do is continue to talk to me that way." And she said, "Get up, go to the principal's office." So I go downstairs to the principal's office. Let me just say I was a good kid. She was a good kid. I was a good kid. So I get downstairs. Me and Shemai grew up together. So she knows I was a good kid. Her mom would say, "Why can't you do things that Shai does? Why can't you do to Shai do this?" And Shemai would say, "Oh, because she's born, I don't want to do that stuff." So I get downstairs to the principal's office, and the principal says to me, I was Jackson, and he said, "Jackson, I don't know what you did, but I don't want to deal with it." He said, "You can go sit in the library, you can go sit somewhere quietly," because what I learned to do was speak up for myself at a very early age. Because if I didn't speak up for myself, it was just going to go untamed and it was going to continue. So when I said, "What you're not going to do is continue to talk to me in that way," it wasn't disrespectful, it was just me setting my boundaries. My principal was so familiar with me setting those boundaries. It wasn't that I was a bad kid that I was down there, it was that he didn't want the headache of dealing with this teacher. He didn't want to deal with it. And I wasn't the be quiet type. So he was going to deal with it unless he found another way around it. So his way of dealing with it was, go sit somewhere. So I went to the library after that class was over. I did come back to the principal's office. The teacher came back to the principal's office as well, and we had to sit in there and we had to talk about it. The principal stepped out of the office so that we can talk about it in a personal space and have our time. And before I could even say anything, she started crying. I mean, big crocodile tears. "I'm just so sorry, there's just been so much going on at home. I just that. And I said, "It's okay, I understand. I understand, absolutely." So in the 11th grade, I found myself not only having my feelings, the trauma that she caused me to be completely ignored, but I found myself catering to her tears. I found myself being her therapist, her counselor. For whatever reason, it didn't matter that I was a student. It didn't matter that I was the youth. Everything got switched over to her. And this is a story that is very common among a lot of Black people. I can't tell you how many Black people have gone to hold someone accountable for the way that they spoke to them, for the way they disrespected them. And it turned into a crying session for that individual that wronged them. And instead of saying, "You know what, I need you to stop crying, this is about me," we continue to let them cry. We listen to the things that they have to say. And that's it. And we leave with that same heaviness. We leave with our same hurts. And that apology, you get the apology, but it's piggybacked with the, "But I was going through this." So there's that explanation, there's that defensiveness that always seems to happen. So we don't have time for it anymore. And think about that, just remember that. It's been a lot of crying, and so it's difficult to continue to do. So sad. So sad is not a place. Stop sending people, situations, accountability, and your responsibility there. Has anybody Anybody have ever heard a story or someone share with you an experience and you've gone or you've seen someone say, oh, that's so sad, right? Oh, so sad. So sad. We know it's sad. That's why we're telling you this story. We know. But here's the problem with so sad. When we do the so sad thing, we forget to take action. We think that so sad is the action, and so now there's nothing else that needs to be done. But that's not true. So we have to stop sending situations there. Because it's not okay. There's accountability that needs to be had. It's so sad, but it's so sad, and, right? Right, we have to couple it with that action. It is so sad. Did you have anything on this one? No. So, a lot of the things that we do at Hope Restores is we do a lot of advocating, not just for the Black community, but we make sure that we are educating with that advocating. So, we talk to a lot of the other organizations and we're communicating and getting that stuff in there. And part of that is we have people calling in, asking us suggestions or things that we can provide, information that we can provide on how to handle this situation. Sometimes we get people calling into Hope Restores and they are going to send something out to their employee, a flyer or some type of informational thing. And they want us to look over it just to make sure that the language in there is inclusive, which is great. We got a phone call and, an email. And this person wanted to know what the options were. So here's the situation. It was a young lady that had used the N-word. She used the N-word, it had been about 2 years. In that 2 years, this young lady has done she's grown a lot in 2 years. She's really grown a lot. She's been fired from, a couple places. This thing has just really followed her around. It's been long enough. She just wants to put this past her. She wants to put this use of the N-word past her. Is there a training or something that she can do? It doesn't have to be formal. But what is something that she can do to just put this past her and move on, get on with her life? Time. You need time. It's going to take time. You don't get to get past that after 2 years. That is the natural consequences. So the things that you're going through as it's happening, that's the natural consequences. And so the thing that I shared with her is that it's not something that time is going to do, it's something that she needs to grow through. So as those natural consequences comes to her, and as she's dealing with that, she's going to have to grow through the use of that word. She's going to have to get to the place that she knows better than to ever use that word again. It just takes time. And when she gets to that place, she'll know it because she won't call and say, hey, it's been 2 years, am I done? Right? Can you put me back in now? It's been 2 years. She has to get to the place that she knows that it is never, ever, ever okay to have that slip up. It's never okay. Because when you really get it, you stop making excuses. Some of us, when we were at those dinner tables, and we heard we heard Uncle Bob say a slip up. But it wasn't a slip up, Uncle Bob did it all the time. But what came along with it was, don't worry about it, it's just Uncle Bob. There's been situations where someone has gotten so upset, used the word, and then it was followed up with, oh, he was just having a really bad day. It was just a bad day. He's a pretty cool guy, actually. Usually he's not like that. It's just a bad day. You have to know that it's never okay to use that. Not on your worst day, not on your best day. It's not okay. And it's something that sticks with us forever. We always remember who used that to us. It takes a long time to drop that. And it sticks with us and it hurts and it stings every single time. So you guys know better, because you're approved.
You guys are approved.
You know that? We still know that, right? Yeah, call them out.
To go make a change. Stop waiting for someone to come along and qualify you. The power is yours. So you guys, everybody in this room, you guys did this training and this presentation. This was not us at all.
Yes, thank you for the presentation.
Thank you. We can go home. You guys did this presentation because you already knew the information. We didn't go through the statistics and everything of it, but you already know it. You guys have all the tools and the power to fight racism, and you don't need us to stand up here to give you permission to do it. So as you leave today, like Captain Planet said, you guys have the power is yours. Don't forget that. Don't make any excuses, don't wonder if it's okay. And you know what? I think Karen can be used to do positive things. So if you know somebody that's a Karen, use that energy that she has to fight against racism. We thank you guys so much for coming here today. And when you leave, know that you have all the tools and the power, and that you did this. So we thank you.
So we're going to have a little question and answer time, and I'm going to circulate this mic around, and also after a little while we'll see if there's any questions from Zoom. So leave it open, and I'll walk around and see questions for you again.
And you guys, I know that it's like 3:10, and if you could go, you are more than welcome to call us or email us or stop in the Hope Restores with questions as well.
If you do leave, please make sure you take the survey. There's some feedback surveys that we would appreciate.
How can we support the work of Hope Restores?
Absolutely. So there's so much work that we do at Hope Restores. One of the biggest ways to support us is to get involved, donate, find out what are the causes that we're dealing with right, or that we're fighting right now. We do have a website, and you can always go to the website and find out some different projects and things that we're working on, but donating is one of the biggest ways to help out. You know, we have a few different people that's done toiletry drives for us. Yeah! That's super helpful. We have a mini pantry, we call it a giving cabinet at Hope Restores. So a lot of times people are able to give food. We're noticing that food is really easy for people to get right now. What's not easy for them to get are the things that has to be purchased with cash. So toilet paper, hygiene items, little things like that. So yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Do we have any questions on that? Oh, yeah.
Can you come back to that because she just stepped out a moment?
Okay.
Barry, are there any questions online that you'd like to?
No, just echoing the importance of having difficult conversations and how, you know, white folks should lean into being uncomfortable about those.
Yeah, absolutely. Get comfortable being uncomfortable. That's it, right? You gotta get comfortable with it. So if there's ever any questions or anything that you know people have, they can always call in. We do a lot of kind of navigating some of those hard topics, but a lot of it is just you being honest when you're coming to speak on these different issues. You know, just be honest about it. You know, talk to your kids, talk to your coworkers. Don't be silent. Mary.
I understand that Hope Restores has some sort of talking thing that can be either in person or online. If you want to talk a little about that, because I'm not quite sure how that works. How does that work?
Yeah, so we have Coffee with Hope Restores every first Friday of the month from 8:30 till whenever. You guys can, well, 8:30 till around like 9:30. You guys can stop in at the Resource Center with coffee and donuts, and then we just sit and talk. We talk to different organizations or people about what we're hearing from the African American community. We ask organizations, what they have going on, what are they doing to make the organization inclusive, and we just have conversations, and it's always pretty positive. I mean, it's always positive, and it's always like a lot of learning and sharing and connecting. Then we also do it on Zoom every third Friday at 8:30 in the morning. If you're interested, please just email us, and then we'll email you the link.
Thank you, Mary, for that reminder. Yeah, Coffee with Hope Resource is a really great way to learn what we're doing at the organization, but then also what, some of you are doing at your organizations. We've already heard that some of you are on boards. Let us know what you're doing. How can we join forces? How can the things that we do at Hope Restores come together and complement some of the things that you're working on just to complete that unity? So, absolutely. Oh, and then we have also volunteering. Volunteering is another huge way that you guys can come alongside of the things that we're working on. We definitely need volunteers, so.
Yeah, tons of volunteers. And don't think that you don't have the skill to volunteer. We can find something for everybody to do. I mean, we need volunteers to drive people to appointments and just the grocery store. We need volunteers to sit and play with kids. And if you have a talent like you garden, or you like to come read books, or you like to cook, come down and share. That's how you connect. That's how we let down that's how we let down our guards, and we connect with each other. So don't be shy. You may know how to sew, and there's little girls that want to learn how to sew. So please volunteer and stop in. Somebody?
I think part of the power that we all have is the power of connections, the connections that we have to organizations and foundations that have funding. I know how I know how you operate in that you are operating on a shoestring. You are two extremely courageous women that have started an organization based on just a few donations, and we've written grants together, and that's been great. But it takes, for anyone that knows the nonprofit world, it takes such a great effort, and to have the power of everyone in this room or in this community behind you will help make you successful. And so I make that challenge, that's a way to volunteer, is to use your power to help you succeed.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Yeah.
Well, I know your struggle about a van, and I wonder if you'd be willing to express that struggle to the group here and on Zoom, in case somebody has a connection or networking that we can bring something up to answer that challenge.
Yes. So we do a transportation program. We transport people to job interviews, grocery stores. A lot of food doesn't string across. There are taxis that are expensive and they can't meet the demand, but buses run funny. So we are transferring people to therapy appointments, taking their kids to school. We are taking people to job interviews. We are doing a lot. And when I say we are actually putting people in our cars, in our vehicles, and taking them. Our morning routine is picking up kids and getting them to school. Our van is not reliable. When somebody builds themselves up to go to a job interview, and then we cannot support them because our vehicle isn't running, we are causing them more discouragement and more trauma, and it's hurtful. So we really do need a new van that's reliable. We need to make sure that our van can get people to where they need to be so they can start knocking down their barriers. Any more questions at all?
Thank you. Yeah. Oh, 1 second.
I was just wondering, and I don't know what all the details are, but if you ever considered, and maybe you already have that, trying to become a 501c organization where you can apply for funding from the Breast Community Foundation.
Yeah.
Because they're really doing a lot of good things too.
Yeah, they are. Oh, I thank you guys so much. Thank you. Yeah,
did a great job with the presentation.
we have applied for our 501(c), and so we're very green, and so we're just waiting for that to come through. We do have a fiscal sponsor, but we have gotten a few grants, one of them through the La Crosse Foundation, so we're absolutely making those connections.
Another way you guys can help is connecting us to people that you know. I mean, there's people who always want to donate or volunteer, and so just putting the word out, and you know, your family members, your friends, people you're connected with, be like, hey, this is cool nonprofit Hope Restores African American Resource Center. This is a way for you to give tangible evidence that you really want to help. You know, so like pass on our email address, share your friend's email address if it's okay with them. You know.
Do we want to talk about the 40/20?
Yeah, go ahead, think about me.
20/40, sorry.
I don't want to step in on that.
No, go ahead.
All I know is that 2040, the year 2040, La Crosse is beginning to look ahead. There is a committee that's gaining statistics and information, asking questions within the committee, looking for community input, and wanting to understand that there needs to be a change in La Crosse, and it's not going to happen on its own. So you can look on the city website. There is a 2040 committee, and you can ask questions, get more information that way. And if there's any input asked, and many times I've seen it at the library. There was someone, a representative at Juneteenth, and that's talked about the Vision 2040. And so it's much more than planting more trees in La Crosse. It's much more than what to do about X property. So it is worthwhile to just see what's going on. That's about it.
Are there any other questions? Mary, do you have any more questions? I'd like to wrap up with a few things. So first, let's thank our speakers again.